So theoretically, that's up and running. I don't know. Is anyone online right now? Sure, yeah. There should be like a link in the meetup notes, like under those bullets. I don't want to bring up that screen again because it's going to go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. It's not doing the crazy. Sweet. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. So I think we can probably get started. Window. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I'm not going to actually jump into the presentation view, but Okay, cool. So thanks everyone for coming on kind of short notice. Sorry for getting this out like a week ahead of time. We'll try to do better at letting you know of upcoming things. I know next month Steve was able to get June Blender. She's going to be doing a talk on, I think she does a class of wine, kind of talking about new PowerShell 5 class functionality. That's going to be like August 8th, I believe. And also like sort of the goal is to have it the second Monday of the month. So if you sort of plan for that, we'll let you know if it changes. And a big thanks to Sapient Technologies for the food. And again, thanks to June Blender, who sort of got it going for this month. It was very helpful. We're going to be starting to try to do Google Hangouts when the presenters are up for it. I don't know how this is going to go the first time. I haven't actually used the setup before, so hopefully it actually works. Theoretically, it seems like it is, but yeah. And so all the materials for this session are actually up now. And if we make any changes during the session, I will edit them and update them on that link. So this link will be available too. All right. So I guess also the topic. So we're going to be talking about the PowerShell gallery and some community projects that are on there. And we'll briefly touch upon OneGet or package management that they call it now. So just a quick introduction on More in Frame. I have trouble describing like what I do at work. I guess I consider myself a perpetual student. I like to learn new things. And if I learn something helpful, I try to share it. Occasionally I tweet helpful things like tools, or occasionally just funny insights from other people. Sometimes I blog, not too often though, because it's usually accompanied by a module or something. It takes a bit more time for me because I'm kind of slow. And a lot of those modules are posted up on my GitHub repository, as well as the PowerShell gallery that we'll be talking about today. And I guess technology background wise, I sort of started and cut my teeth in the enterprise playing with VMware and Active Directory, System Center, Citrix, XenApp, and a lot of stuff. But nowadays I don't know what I'd call it, I guess modern IT type stuff, trying to bring a lot of Windows systems into an ecosystem that's using like Puppet and ChatOps for predominantly Linux oriented technologies. So that has been a lot of fun. In terms of agenda, I just have some housekeeping, basically some links that I can share. And then we're going to go into just some basics on package management. And then we'll go into the actual PowerShell modules for working with package management. They're OneGet or package management and PowerShell Get. And finally, we'll just cover some community projects that you can find up there that are pretty helpful. And time permitting, we'll just do a quick walkthrough on how you can actually publish a module if you're interested in doing that. And I'll share some references on having like an internal repository, like rather than like the public PowerShell gallery, you can have something like behind your firewall with like trusted code that you know should be available all the time. All right. So housekeeping, just some notes. We have some various, websites and links up there. We created a GitHub organization. So if presenters are up for it, we can take their materials and we'll throw them up there so that you can grab them. Occasionally, if there's some PowerShell happenings going on in Boston, we'll tweet about it, including, advertisements for this meetup. We'll start streaming on Google Hangouts. So I just kind of put short links here if they were crazy long links. If you guys have any like coworkers, clients, so forth that use PowerShell that would be interested in coming to these, definitely let them know. It would be fun to have more people. And I usually kind of just mention this. If you want to join, there's a PowerShell Slack team that's kind of handy. It used to be kind of chatty, but they've separated out the IRC room. So now there's actually a PowerShell help channel that's more dedicated to PowerShell. There's less like chatter and sort of stuff that you see on IRC. So there's like a link to get an invite right there. And finally, if you guys are interested in presenting, just shoot an email here, talk to Steve, myself, or tweet at this boss PSUG. It'd be great to have some like local guys presenting, guys and girls. Sorry about that. It'd be really fun to have that. All right, so I guess that's it. So let's just get into the actual topic. So I don't know, how many of you guys actually work with like package managers at work? Okay, cool. So not too many. So the basic idea with package management is you're just managing like the installation, configuration, even removing packages, generally software. In this case, we're going to be talking a lot about PowerShell modules. And it's kind of helpful because it's a really great way to sort of find and discover new modules, right? So if you want to find a PowerShell module today, you'll probably go out and Google and try to find like, oh, I want to find a PowerShell module for Excel. And you'll find links from like, I don't know, 2009 and so forth, going into like COM objects and all that, and things that you might not really care about. But when you have an actual package manager, it's a little easier to see specifically PowerShell projects in this case. It's also great for distribution. So there's sort of two ways that we used to distribute PowerShell modules. You might like log on to a vendor website or reset your password and log on and download an MSI and have to go through an install process. Hopefully VMware and some other companies will change that. Not to point any fingers, but it would be really great if they did that. Or you might do something like curl bash, or in the PowerShell world, you're running invoke expression against some random text on the web, which is not always the best idea. So in this case, you would just run something like install module import Excel instead of running some random code from the internet. And finally, it can kind of help with dependencies. So if you write a module or someone else has written a module that depends on other modules or packages, it will handle installing those dependencies when you get it up and running, which can be really helpful instead of having like this long drawn out process of, okay, before you install this module, go out and find this other module. It will just do that all under the covers. Eventually, we'll probably find out that that adds complications and we'll have things like virtual environments and so forth. But for now, I think it will be pretty straightforward because there aren't too many PowerShell modules out there. And on that note, I have a little chart over here. I don't know how accurate this is, but I think it kind of reflects the reality. A lot of these other languages, even ones that are somewhat new like Go, have kind of massive package repositories, right? Like you'll notice on the axis over here, there's what, 50,000? And if you look at the PowerShell gallery, which we're about to browse out to, there are 940 unique items. I'm really hoping that changes because it's really helpful to have these things really just quickly accessible and easy to install. And that's 940 items, but it also includes, let's see, Azure, a whole bunch of subcomponents for Azure, right? So 109 of these are basically modules for talking to Azure, and something like 168 are going to be DSU resources. So actual just PowerShell modules for writing PowerShell, there's a little less than 950 at the moment. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it on package management. Any questions on package management so far? Have any of you guys played with PowerShell Get or OneGet yet? Yeah. Couple? Okay, cool. Yay. Demos, yeah. Okay, so sorry about the slides. I am not a big fan of slides, so we're going to just jump into some PowerShell if I can find it. Yeah. All right, so how is the text? Can you read that? Yeah, yes. Cool. Okay, sweet. So if you're using PowerShell, you probably know there's some handy functions for sort of discovering modules and commands and so forth. So if we want to list all the modules, I'm not going to do that because it's going to take a while. You could run something like get module list available. In this case, I'm just going to return back information on these two modules that we care about. And hold on, let me just make this a little smaller so it's more room. Cool. So basically, oh, I skipped over a section. Sorry, guys. It's kind of important to know how to get started with PowerShell package management in OneGet. And I completely skipped over that. PowerShell Gallery. Okay, so the whole reason I went to PowerShellGallery.com is there's these really helpful links right here that tell you basically how do you get started using these modules. The simplest way is if you're running Windows 10, it comes right in the box. And presumably when you get Windows Server 2016, it will also be included. Another way you can get it, if you're running like 2012 R2 or down level systems, you can install Windows Management Framework 5. or PowerShell 5 basically, and along with a few other components. That's actually really helpful. And if you're having trouble convincing your management that PowerShell 5 is important, you could potentially get help from your security team. There's an interesting report from the Australian Department of Defense, so one of the divisions in there, basically saying, if you want to protect your organization, you should probably install the latest PowerShell because it includes a number of benefits on the security side, logging and so forth. And I'll include a link to that in the notes. But if you're running like, I think certain versions of SharePoint or certain Microsoft systems that don't support Windows Management Framework 5, or if your management is not interested in using modern technology, you can still just use the MSI installer and actually install these modules if you're using PowerShell 3 or PowerShell 4. I think at the moment this is still in preview. Yeah, they haven't released for some reason, they haven't released the production bits for this yet, but the ones that are included with Windows Management Framework 5 and Windows 10 are. So just a quick heads up on that. And I think that's pretty much it. Just to quickly show you the website, I mean, you can search for, I don't know, import Excel, or actually, wait, Excel. Just a quick way to search for modules and so forth. And you can actually, click the module, see who wrote it. Doug Fink wrote with this one. It's a really handy module. We'll look at it later. You can look at the file list and all that. It's just a basic kind of repository for PowerShell packages. But we're going to go through accessing that from PowerShell. Okay, so now I'm back in order. Sorry about that. So long story short, the other discovery command so we looked at, how do you find modules in PowerShell? You already hopefully know that. You can also find commands in a particular module. You just run get commands, specify the module, and it should spit back a list of commands. So for package management, we have things like find a package, install a package, save a package. And for PowerShell get, it's sort of for working with that PowerShell gallery. It's going to be oriented around modules and scripts. And, you can run all the commands like get help. Generally, I've been tending to use online because they've been moving kind of quickly, and I find it easier to just reference the online material. So we're going to do just a quick walkthrough on OneGet or package management. This is sort of, when it first came out, everyone thought it was Chocolatey, which is sort of like a package manager for Windows. They included Chocolatey in the box as one of the package managers that you could access. So everyone was like, oh, OneGet is just for accessing Chocolatey. But it turns out you can actually get to a lot of other technologies. So there's two things to think about when you're talking about package management. There's sort of the provider, which is, how do I install this? How do I query the package management system? Basically, what can I install from? And by default, you're going to get, you can install MSIs. You can install from PowerShell Get, which is like PowerShell modules, and a few other ones. But there's more available online. So if you run find package provider, and I have just, this is like a fresh install. So it's going to ask you if you want to install NuGet. You could use the -force parameter if you don't want that to prompt. And you'll see there's a bunch of other stuff like, so I can set up access to Chocolatey or to a container image repository or to, I think there's a GitHub provider as well. So there's all sorts of stuff online and you can actually write your own provider. It's kind of handy. And once you actually have a provider, there's an actual source, right? So the provider is like, how do you get to something? And the source is what's the actual location, right? So in this case, the PS Gallery provider can connect to PowerShellGallery.com. And it's not a trusted repository. It's just community contributed stuff. You don't really know if it's malicious or not. Hopefully not, but you never know. And you'll notice I don't have Chocolatey here. So a lot of people tend to use Chocolatey. I probably wouldn't recommend it in the enterprise unless you go with some of their, they have some offerings on there. You can Google around for that, and I'll include links in the notes afterwards. But to install it, just do set package source, and you just specify the name is going to be Chocolatey and the provider name is Chocolatey. So it's really straightforward. And again, I could have done force. I'm just going to click the button. And that's it. So I have Chocolatey now. I'm basically going to say, hey, find packages. And it's going to search through PowerShell Get and Chocolatey. Because if I do find package source, it should show that I have two things now. Yep. So now I have the PowerShell Gallery and Chocolatey. So I'm going to find a package. I'm going to get the first 50 because I don't want a whole bunch of results coming back. I'm going to send it to out grid view, which is basically like a little spreadsheet where I can pick things and send what I click through the pipeline to install package. So I'll run that. So it comes back with a whole bunch of stuff that I can install. And just as an example, I'll install 7-zip. And are you sure you want to install this from Chocolatey because it's not trusted? And that's pretty much it. So now I have 7-zip installed in my system. I could do get package Chocolatey, and presumably if I type in 7-zip, presumably it might not be indexed yet. 7-zip. Well, it'll be there somewhere at some point. It worked in the demo before. Damn. Oh man, one more try. Okay, yeah, so it finally came up. Okay, so that's a really quick way you can install packages, view packages that are on your system, and when you're done, you can uninstall them. So that's it. I really want that version of 7-zip. And so the idea, I think, with Microsoft is there's going to be more providers, right? So there's the PowerShell gallery, which is like modules and scripts and so forth. And there's Chocolatey, which is like it's just a general package manager. But Microsoft could presumably, and I think they've indicated that they're interested in this. They haven't said they're definitely going to do it. But it would be kind of nice if you could install like updates or downloads like Message Analyzer or different Microsoft software, or even hotfixes. I don't know, like I used to manage SCOM, and basically that meant if I wanted to install an agent for a particular operating system, there were a whole bunch of hotfixes that I would have to get depending on the role of that server. And it's kind of a pain in the butt to register email and click through for every single hotfix. It would have been nice to just have a quick PowerShell script to pull those all down. So hopefully we'll see that in the future.
You took the top 50 and you piped it to the grid, and then you were able to choose which package.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, OutGrid View just so it sends all that information into OutGrid View, and then once you pick a couple things, and you can like pick multiple things and click OK, it will send the rest of that down the pipeline. And I'm just sending it to install package, so it installed it. And it's kind of a really quick way to like manually pick what you want to get to. Yeah.
So the key is the pass through.
Yes. Yep. Otherwise, it will just display it for you, and it won't take any action afterwards. So I'm kind of skipping by that because this is really going to be focused on PowerShell modules and not package management and OneGet in general. Any questions on that before we get to modules? Yay. Okay, cool. So PowerShell Get, this is sort of the thing that I've found the most helpful so far when you're working with PowerShell. It's basically a system for installing, configuring, managing PowerShell modules. In the past, you might have like a network share that has a couple PowerShell modules. You might have trouble keeping up to date with what versions what. Maybe you have like a different network share, or you have your own like folder naming structure for different versions. It can get kind of messy managing things like that. So something like PowerShell Get or an internal PowerShell Get or PowerShell Gallery can be very helpful. Ultimately, it's just a wrapper around the commands we just used. And let's see, you can have your own internal system. So Microsoft has this like PS private gallery DSC module. And there's a walkthrough, and I'll grab you the link afterwards, but it's pretty reasonable to set that up. It allows you to work with scripts and modules, but the focus is really on modules. Scripts are sort of an afterthought, but they are an interesting concept. You can basically have scripts up there instead of entire modules. And that's it. So if you want to find a module, all you do is you just type find module. And in this case, I want to look for modules that have the tag Slack. Maybe I care about Slack and Excel for some strange reason. And I can say, hey, there's a PS Slack module, there's an import Excel module, and there's some other stuff that I don't really care about. So it's a quick way to find them. You could search online as well. It really doesn't matter which route you take for that. And before you install a module, you can always save it, or you could just save it to a particular path. I probably didn't have that. Yep. Okay. So you can save a module. It's really straightforward to do that. You just do save module, the name of the module, and where you want to save it. So I just saved a disk part module to my temporary directory. If you want to install a module, it's just as simple. You don't even have to provide a path. It will do that for you. So you can do it at the system level, or you can install it for your own current user. So I'm going to install 3 modules that I find pretty helpful for the entire system. And it's probably going to prompt me because it doesn't trust PowerShell Gallery. It's going to go and install them. And maybe I care about Slack, but no one else does. So I can install that for my current user. And again, it's going to prompt me. Cool. So I don't know if I actually have it there. A quick way. I'm just going to basically list all the modules in my system. I'm going to select the name and the path so we can kind of see where these were installed. And I'm going to format a table. Okay, so in this case, we installed, let's see, import Excel. Oh man, there's probably too much. I shouldn't have done this. Okay, so import Excel, the ones that we just installed, you'll see they're installed in program files, Windows PowerShell modules, and they actually include this new way of specifying modules. So it's got the module name, and then it's got the actual version number. So PowerShell can now handle that, and it will basically, when you do import module, it will import the newest module version that you have available. Yes, yeah. And let's see. And so for the one that I installed for my current user, it threw it in users, and I'm running as administrator right now, which is smart. And then documents, PowerShell modules, and pretty much the typical path that you would have if you were installing a module for yourself. And it's worth noting, so a lot of the modules out here are sort of open sourced. So I'm just going to quickly browse out to the webpage of the project of one of these. So when you do find module, it returns a bunch of properties. These are all on the website as well. And there's something called a project URI. So in this case, if I go to GitHub, and I'm just going to launch Internet Explorer with that link. You'll basically see, all the source code. This is from a guy named Doug Fink, and hopefully we can get him here. He mentioned that he might come to Boston at some point, so it'd be really fun to have him. He does some really cool PowerShell stuff. And so if you ever have an issue with a PowerShell module that's out on GitHub, you can always go in and submit an issue, which is kind of handy. Maybe you found a bug, or maybe you have a suggested feature. It's a great way to sort of contribute back if you're not comfortable actually writing code for them yet. Or if you actually do like writing code and want to contribute to them, you can also basically go through the GitHub workflow and sort of fork a project, make some changes, and submit them a pull request. That's a different topic. There's a lot of information out there on the web for that, but it's definitely something I'd recommend getting into. If you actually have your own modules out here, you might find that other people actually help improve stuff that you're using at work. So you can kind of, you can get people to work on your stuff for free. That's kind of greedy. It's really kind of a nice ecosystem. So I definitely recommend getting involved in it. So modules are really straightforward, right? We just installed a module, we found a module. It's pretty simple to use. So if I ever want to just install a module and rely on it in a script, I don't have to hope that it's out on a network share somewhere. I can literally just at the top of the script do install module, the name of the module, and I would probably tack on force so it doesn't prompt me in the actual script. I'll just leave that in there. So that's sort of working with the gallery to access modules. There's also this idea of scripts, which is basically instead of a PowerShell module, it's just a random script. Could contain a function, could contain just a script that does something. It's really up to whoever put that script up there on the PowerShell gallery. So use the same thing. Instead of find module, you just run find script. And it's pretty straightforward. Again, you do install script instead of install module. So I put one up on there the other day, OpenISE function that basically just, it takes a function name that you have in your PowerShell session. It will open the code for it in a new screen. And we'll use that later. So now that I've run that, I've installed OpenISE function. I can run get installed script and see what I have available to me. It's pretty straightforward. It says yada, yada, yada. And there's a lot more information. Like other PowerShell objects, you use select dash property star to see all of the information that's actually under the covers. So in this case, I can see that it's installed, it's installed to C program files, Windows PowerShell scripts, along with some other information. So similar to modules where you have to import the module afterwards, like it's not going to do it for you, I have to go and actually run this script. So the code here will actually run the script. I know it's okay because in there, it's actually just a function. But if these are scripts that actually do things, you probably wouldn't want to run this. So in this case, it's basically saying, get the installed scripts, so the information right here. And for each one, pull out the name, which is OpenISE function, the installed location, which is the path, and basically create a path that is this full path to the name.ps1 and .source it. So it's going to load it up in my session. So at this point, I should be able to say OpenISE function, and it's available to me, and I can use it to, I don't know. So I can actually look at the code in the install module function because Microsoft distributes this as a script module, which means basically it's not compiled language. It's just PowerShell. So I could read through Microsoft's code. It's going to be a bit more professional, and I don't know. For me, it's more obtuse because it's hard to read because they do a lot more error handling and sort of I don't know, professional code writing. But you can read it and kind of see what sort of practices they use when they write code, or if you run into trouble, you can actually try to debug it by looking at their code. That would be a bit above my skill level, but you could definitely do that if you were interested in it. Cool. And so I installed the scripts. You can also save a script to a specific location, right? So there's a show tree command out there. Maybe I want to save that to ctemp. And now I can use ISE, which is a shortcut to PowerShell ISE.exe, and open it in this window. And I see some examples on how to use it. So, hey, what the heck? I'll just run this. Oh, I did not actually run it. Okay, so it basically shows a tree of your directory path. Oh, I actually included the code I was going to run, and I don't have that on my system, so that will not work. I should probably pull that down. No, I'll do it later. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So that's sort of the basics of working with the gallery in terms of installing modules and scripts. I don't know, any questions so far? Is this something that you guys would actually use, or I don't know how useful it would be at this point?
Should be the first place to go for looking for something extra.
Yes, I definitely think so, because a lot of times, you know, if someone's actually maintaining their scripts and they're maintaining interest in like the PowerShell community, they're going to be putting their modules up here. So it's probably a good way to find folks who are staying current with PowerShell and actually publishing their modules. So it's definitely a good first stop for looking for a PowerShell module. Cool. So that's sort of it on the gallery and package management. I don't know. Did everyone get food and everything? I'm good to move forward. Cool. All right. So that was sort of just like, how do you install modules? But really the fun part is playing with the actual modules that are out there. And there's some really handy stuff. So just as a sort of heads up, I've run a few things on my computer. I've set up a list of computers and I've set up a text file that basically has a couple strings that I want to redact, just so that they don't show up on the screen, because I don't know if my employer likes me using the names up there. And I've also sort of serialized my token for using Slack ahead of time. So the first module I kind of wanted to do just a really quick run through is, and I'm not going to do like a deep in-depth thing on each of these modules. I just want to kind of show you that they're out there. And then potentially at some point, maybe we'd have the authors come in and talk about them, or you can discover them on your own. So the first one is called Posh RS Job. It's basically a way to do things really fast in parallel. So typically, if you like Google around for like, how do I do something in PowerShell in parallel, you'll find a lot of responses saying, hey, use PowerShell jobs, right? Because that does things in parallel. The problem with that is it's going to spin up an entire PowerShell process every single time, which is very expensive in terms of resources, and it's very slow. So it's definitely not something I would do unless I only had a couple jobs that were going to be like long running jobs. Another recommendation is workflows. And if you've used workflows before, you might have run into this, but there are definitely some quirks. Every time I've used them, I've run into this little niche scenario, and it ended up being something that just wouldn't work in a workflow, even using inline script. And in this case, parallelization with workflows, actually, if you end up using inline script, you're still only going to get, I think you can only do like 5 threads. It's still pretty slow. So I tend to not use them because they're just not very fast, and it forces you to use workflow language, which is not exactly PowerShell. The best thing, I think, if you have it, is if you have PowerShell remoting enabled, you can actually distribute your workload on all of those remote systems, and you can run it in parallel. So it's really going to be the best bet, but not all of us have PowerShell remoting set up on all of our systems. I know everywhere I've worked, I unfortunately have not had that set up yet, but someday. So anyways, it helps having like basically a way to run a whole bunch of things really quickly, and Posh RS Job is a way to do that. You might hear a lot of people saying run spaces are scary, but if you use a tool that someone's written, like Posh RS Job, it's really just pretty simple. In fact, this one is modeled after PowerShell Jobs. So if you know how to use PowerShell Jobs, you'll quickly know how to use this module. So I've already installed it, but I'll just install it again to make sure it's there. So if you ever depend on a module from the PowerShell gallery, I'd usually recommend using an internal repository, but in this case, I would put this at the top of my script, right? I want to make sure that I always have that. You know, maybe I'm running some code on a system that hasn't had this pulled down yet. I can just sort of check for it and maybe pull it in at the top of a script. I'm going to import it, so I can basically see all the commands in Posh RS job. So it's really pretty straightforward, right? You can start a job, you can wait for a job, you can receive a job, pretty much like you do with the get the jobs in PowerShell. I have a bunch of code here. You don't really have to pay attention to what it does, but long story short, it's creating a list of response times that I want to simulate. Right, so this is going to be milliseconds. So there's going to be a couple that are going to be like 14 seconds and a whole bunch that are going to be like under a second. So if you're querying a whole bunch of systems, chances are you'll have a bunch of systems that are really quick, they work, they're great. But maybe you're going to have a handful of systems that really slow things down, that take like 20 seconds or even longer to respond. So this is just sort of a quick illustration of, you know, maybe I'm going to query 100 systems and see how fast it would be using run spaces. And I'll sort of walk through the code because it's going to run for a couple of seconds. Oh. Cool. So what I'm doing is I'm saying create a variable called output, and I'm going to assign it the results of sending all those response times to start RS job. Every job is going to be called the little number that you saw, -test. I'm going to run 100 of those at a time, and I'm going to do this code. So I'm going to sleep for however many milliseconds is in that number. And I'm going to output the computer name, a metric, something divided by 2, and a random, you know, status code. So you see this actually ran in 20 seconds. So instead of waiting for all of those really quick things, as well as like each of the 20-second or 11-second, 15-second, 14-second, it just ran that all at once. So if you have thousands of systems or even hundreds of systems, this is just a really quick way to hit them really quickly. If you're loading big text files in memory or doing other things that uses memory, do keep in mind that this can chew up resources very quickly. You know, if you're just querying information, it's probably not be too bad. But if you're like pulling in the data from a text file that's pretty big and you're doing a ton of threads at a time, you could find yourself running out of RAM. Cool. So, oh, and I can just do the output. So we see there's a whole bunch of, you know, node, blah, 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 422, 211. I don't know. These numbers are pretty meaningless. I just wanted to kind of illustrate how quick it can go. I would definitely recommend checking this out. It saves you a ton of time. It's probably one of the most used modules that I've found when I'm using other people's modules. It's just very helpful. Have any of you guys actually used like run spaces or anything to sort of speed things up before? Cool. Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, this might seem complicated, but think of it similar to just if you're doing start job and stop job. It's really, once you start using it, it's pretty straightforward. And there's some great examples out there on Bo's website. The next one, so how many of you guys work with SSH, or do you? Okay, so a few. Okay, so I wasn't sure if this would be applicable, but awesome. So there's a community project out there, and I guess it's worth highlighting. So Microsoft is actually porting OpenSSH to Windows. And so people are like, oh, well, why would you care about a PowerShell module if they're doing that? But you're not going to want to use SSH or the daemon in a PowerShell script. You're probably going to want a module that abstracts it out into PowerShell language, like start SSH session, instead of like trying to remember the actual command. That's kind of the whole benefit of PowerShell, is that it's got this sort of common syntax. So it's definitely still going to be helpful to use modules like this. In fact, if you're using Python, you're probably using something like Paramico and Spur. You're not going to be using SSH. Anyways, so I'm going to quickly install and import this module. You've already seen that process. Again, it's just install it and then import it. And I can list the commands from it once it's done. Right, so for this module, it's kind of handy. You can do SFTP operations, SSH, SCP. It's great if you have sort of a heterogeneous environment, or maybe you have just a few devices that are SSH and you want to kind of manage them with PowerShell. It can be very helpful. So hopefully this is going to work and you're not actually going to see my computer names. So I loaded up a list of strings that I don't want to show you, for some reason, a bunch of computer names, and I'm going to basically say, list all these computers and replace that redacted text with a star. And theoretically, yeah, so there's a whole bunch of hosts that I can actually hit, and you won't actually see it. And this is complicated. So if you guys, have you ever worked with calculated properties before? When you send output from PowerShell to the pipeline, like, I don't know, dir. If you've ever wanted to sort of adjust or add properties to the output, it's really easy. It looks ugly, but it's literally just, it's this syntax where you have this funky, it's like a hash table. You have a label and expression. The label is going to be the whatever, the property name or the column in this case. And so in this case, I'm going to make a host column. And the expression is the code that you want to run. And if you've used PowerShell, hopefully you know the $_ is the current item. So in this one, I'm basically saying, instead of showing you host, I'm going to show you host - replace redacted. So it's basically a way to kind of hide the host name in that case. Sorry for kind of jumping through hoops with this, but definitely look into calculated properties if you haven't used them. They're a very helpful way to use PowerShell. I'm going to get my credential, and hopefully I can remember it. And theoretically, I am going to spin up some sessions on those systems. And I'm just going to force accept the key. Maybe don't do that in production, but we'll see if it actually works. We'll give it a couple seconds. Okay, so I don't know if it actually worked, but so I've just created a bunch of sessions, right? So I did new SSH session. I give it a list of computer names. I didn't have to give it one at a time. I can give it an array of computer names. I gave it my credential, and I should theoretically be up and running. You'll see I'm using host name here. So I'm selecting the session ID, the connected property, and host name, again, is basically me replacing host with this little calculated property. Okay, so it looks like I'm connected to all of these hosts. So now if I want, I can quickly run a command against all of those hosts. Again, so I'm going to do invoke SSH commands. I'm going to run against all those sessions. I'm just going to run the uname command, and I'm again going to give you back that kind of redacted host name. And I'm using a calculated property again. Sorry, I know it's really ugly. And I'm basically saying I want the OS type, and because this is SSH, it's just going to be plain text output. So I want the first item in the array of output there. So we'll run that. Theoretically, yeah. So basically, I can see that I'm talking to a whole bunch of Linux systems. You can imagine you could do a whole bunch of other stuff with this. This is just a quick demo to kind of show you the really basics. Sure. So the question was basically, how would you typically handle errors with this, I think? So in this case, I ran sessions, and up here, basically, I piped the output of sessions to, I want to see the session ID connected and then the host name. So I could add basically logic handling that would say, hey, does that actually come back as connected? And I think there's other information in the output of that command. I just selected these ones, but yeah. Yes. So I'll throw some links in the show notes, but basically in PowerShell, the kind of like a good way of doing error handling is doing try catch. So arg. So I'm basically going to throw. So I would have code up here, and if it's a terminating error, and just to one other quick mention, get commands. Get command isn't going to error out, but just to kind of illustrate, you always have to do error action stop on a PowerShell command, because a lot of them are going to give you non-terminating errors. Like if you run get child item or dir, and it has trouble accessing a file, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep listening to files for you. So in that case, it wouldn't actually go to the cache. So adding error action stop will say throw a terminating argument or terminating error. And then in the catch block, you basically do whatever you need to do to handle that error, and you can optionally have a finally block. And when you're in here, $_ is the error. So I might do write error $_ So I always like giving the actual error that was thrown so that people can look at it, but then I can include my own error, like writes arg for $_. And so in a catch block, $_ is basically just your current error. So really quickly, theoretically, so the first one, this is the actual error. In this case, it's just arg, because I threw arg. And the second one is arg exclamation point. So I could have added like text, like, I had an error for SSH session XYZ. Yeah, so there's a lot more out there. I'll include a link in the show notes for that.
And then the logging is a function for logging.
Yes. So there's a you could write it to a text file, and there's a number of actually in find module tag logging. So with any package management solution, you'll probably find that there's a whole bunch of logging options out there. So I know I've seen one from like Dave Wyatt and a number of other folks that sort of give you options for where you might want to log your stuff to, or you could write your own if you like maybe wanted to log it to like a proprietary system or an internal database of some sort. Yep. Oh, no problem. Cool. So at this point, we have all those sessions out there. I don't want to stay connected to them, so I'm just going to get all of them and pipe them to remove session. And the output of remove session is just whether it succeeded in removing the session. So in this case, it succeeded. So theoretically, if I do get SSH session, I should not have any. Yep, so I'm good to go. So that's Posh SSH. Any questions on it? Has anyone used that before? Cool. Okay, so I definitely recommend checking it out if you want to control things with SSH from PowerShell. It's a really fantastic module. Cool. Next one. So import Excel. So I don't know about you guys, but I personally don't really like using Excel, but a lot of other people, the folks that we support, people in the business, they use Excel. So being able to actually work with Excel documents is very helpful. And it's kind of a pain, but maybe you don't want to install Excel on your servers. In the past, you might have installed Excel and you can use PowerShell to access it through COM objects, which is kind of messy and gets kind of funky in scheduled tasks, particularly in newer operating systems. So a guy named Doug Fink wrote this module that basically wraps an open source DLL that lets you talk to Excel without installing Excel. And it's a really, really helpful module. So I've installed it. It's got a whole bunch of commands in it, but really the key ones are going to be import Excel and export Excel. And so just we could take the output that we got before, but just a whole bunch of things about nodes and numbers and so forth. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this output to export Excel and give it a path. I want to auto size it, so I don't have to go in and like pick the size of the columns. I'm going to freeze the top row in the first column, and I'm going to give it a particular table name. So basically, I'm going to force it into a table because that kind of makes it look prettier for people who like pretty tables. I'm now realizing that I can't really open Excel for you guys. Did I install on here? I don't think I did. Okay, so I don't have Excel on here, and I don't have a simple way to get this, do I?
You can read it with PowerShell.
Yeah, so I could open that on my desktop and show it to you, but really quick, see if I can do drag and drop, bidirectional. Copy. Will this actually work? I don't know. Where do I actually want to drop it? Sure. No, okay. It's not going to work. Well, if we browse out to Doug's gallery, he actually has these. So Doug Fink is kind of known for illustrating his work with GIFs, animated GIFs. It's actually kind of a cool idea. I found that people will spend a lot more time looking at an animated GIF than they will actually reading your instructions. So if you want to do that, he uses something called GIFcam. I'll include a link in the notes. Let's see. I'll actually scroll down to one of the earlier ones where it was just sort of basic functionality. So in this case, he ran get process and he output it to Excel, and it's all there. There's a lot more functionality in terms of sort of making it pretty. You can export pivot tables if you want things that are really pretty. It's definitely worth looking into. And so one common workflow I have is maybe I have to get information from some end users who aren't really savvy with computers. So I'll send them a spreadsheet with some table headers, and I'll have them send it back to me, and I can then read it back in with export Excel or import Excel. So we can't actually view this, but I can run import Excel and show you guys that I get the same data back in from running it. Demo fail. Sorry, guys. It's definitely worth checking this out, though. It's really helpful. You don't have to install Excel. If I had a quick way to copy this to my desktop and I knew how to use my Mac, I would do that. Unfortunately, I don't. So any questions on import Excel? Cool. Okay. So the next up, this one isn't really helpful. I just thought it's kind of fun to show. If you guys, so does anyone actually use like an internal like chat service like Slack or HipChat or something along those lines, or IRC even? Okay. So not too many people. It's really kind of nice. So at my last job, it was very common. If you'd have like some kind of incident, you would all gather in a war room, and there's a bunch of physical people who are going to ask you questions. And when the next person comes in the room, you kind of have to explain what's going on. You'll have a bunch of email chains and people will get pulled in at different times. But when you're using like a sort of like a shared group chat solution, all of that data is in the history. It's searchable. You pull someone new into an incident, they can immediately see all of the history. It's a very helpful solution. So PS Slack is just a really quick way to access Slack. So I can send a message, I can get the history for a channel. I'm just going to really quickly just send a message. Oh, damn. Don't look at that. That was not supposed to show. So I will change that immediately after. Thankfully, that's for the PowerShell team. Yeah, I'll be switching that out in a second. Okay, so it's really quick to like recycle the token, so I can do that in a sec. So basically, I'm going to run a quick thing that's going to take the output that we just had. It's going to look in the metric B property for anything that had an error, and there were a whole bunch of those. I'm going to select the first one because I don't want to have a whole bunch of errors showing up. I'm going to extract the name from it. This is a bunch of kind of ugly looking text. I'm just going to kind of show you the idea behind it. Like you might have a SCOM command channel that sends an alert to Slack, or another monitoring platform that sends this information. So I'm sending as the SCOM bot. I'm going to give it a title. If you give it something deterministic, you can actually search for it later. I can make that title clickable. I include some information on node text. This is basically 3 backticks. It's like kind of like Markdown. And in PowerShell, to do 3 backticks, you need 6 because it's an escape character. I want it to show up red, and there's some kind of fallback property that you always have to set. So I just leave that set. And theoretically, I should be able to go into Slack, into the PowerShell team and the Boston channel, and I'll see that this Slack API tester, SCOM bot, if you actually register it, you can give it your own name. I didn't actually set that there. It'll say, hey, everything's broken. And maybe you would link to like an article, like a KB article on what actually broke instead of that. And you can include like content, like, what computer is actually broken. You might pull from your database and say who's actually responsible for that server, and include kind of helpful contextual alert information in there. You could also do the same thing and just send it by email, but I found it kind of handy to have right in Slack. Okay. And the next time, if I was going to send that error again, I might say, hey, do I see anything in the history for that channel in the past, I might say for a week or for a day, whatever I care about, that matches that particular error message, because I don't want to actually, spam the channel. And in this case, it says, hey, yeah, I actually found that alert. So I could kind of filter it out for the next time. So that's PS Slack. Hold on one sec. So I'm going to quickly reset that key. And on the key page, it also shows all of my other Slack team's keys. So bear with me. I'm really sorry about that. There is pizza in the back, and there are drinks outside if you want to take a quick break. It should only take a couple of seconds, but Slack test token. PowerShell reissue token. Ha. Oh, what is my password?
Oh, you use it? Oh, okay. It sounds like something you should use first.
Whew, okay.
Oh, really?
Hey, Steve, do you still have the link up on for the Hangout?
Yeah.
Can you tell me if it's like still broadcasting just after the HDMI switch?
Yeah, it's just a blue screen.
It is a blue screen right now?
It's like, yeah, it's that right there.
Okay, cool. So now I could do share. Oh, let me actually exit this web page. This will have all the tokens. Sweet. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that, guys. When I was doing the demo, I didn't realize how high the DPI would be on these projectors, and it like concatenated the token. So I was like, oh, there's no way that's going to show that whole long token. But yeah, it did. I'm just gonna wait like another 2 minutes just for in case anyone comes back. So I don't know. Are those? Would anyone actually use any of those projects? I think it's kind of cool. Like, so a lot of times I've found that, it's really fun to write your own stuff. And so sometimes I might start diving in and trying to write something, but there's a lot of really helpful projects out there. And it's kind of fun to kind of borrow from the developer community. And instead of like writing the code ourselves, it's really helpful to just borrow the tools that other people have written. Sometimes you might have to actually write your own, and it is helpful for learning. But I found a lot of times you can just borrow what people have written, or maybe even work with them to extend it, or just let them know that they could improve functionality a certain way. And they're usually pretty helpful in terms of working with you. All right. Cool. Yeah, and so there's a lot more out there. I kind of highlighted like the ones that I've found really helpful, but depending on what you actually use at work, there's probably things more specific to your environment or your technologies that could come in quite handy. And if you have like vendors that write PowerShell modules, well, first off, if you have vendors that don't write PowerShell modules, definitely harass them. Let them know that they should be writing a PowerShell module. I found it, depending on how much pull you have, you could potentially sway the decision of a particular technology. If they don't have PowerShell support, personally, I find that a huge detractor. And I usually, all else being equal, I'll always pick the one that has the better PowerShell implementation, assuming that everything else works and is the right fit. But if they do have a module and they don't have it on the gallery, just ping them about it. It's kind of new, so there are a lot of vendors out there who haven't actually put stuff on there, but it's reasonably straightforward to do, and I'll show you a demo in a minute, but it's definitely worth it. Cool. Oh, hide. All right, I think we may as well keep going. So there's not too much left. Any questions on sort of just community modules out there? Those particular ones? Move forward. Yeah.
How'd you find the package providers? So you had quite a few of them.
Oh, sure. So the question was, how do you find the different package providers? So if I go back to, of course I closed it. 0. Okay, so there's basically, I can see what's on my system. That's get package provider. And then if you want to find what's out there, because potentially people could be adding new ones all the time. I don't think it's going to happen too often, but see. It's just find package provider. So there's different ones out there. It looks like there's one for GitHub and GitLab. So if you're using Git, I think you guys might, yeah. Yeah, and presumably you can write your own provider if you're really heavy into development. Personally, it'd be a bit over my head, but yeah. Cool. All right, so that was like community projects. Now I want to just quickly jump into just kind of how do you publish modules? And it's really pretty simple. So, oh no, another demo fail. I'm sorry, guys. So I kind of started, we didn't really realize we wouldn't be able to find someone for this. So this is kind of a short notice if you haven't noticed from the content of it. All right, so I'm going to quickly clone down a repository and kind of show you how I can actually update this in the gallery. So I'm going to clone PS Slack. Yeah. So this is the module I just demoed. I'm going to make like a really superficial change and show you how to publish it. So I'm just going to open up an Explorer window. And when you're publishing a module, just the one thing that you have to do, and there are ways around this, I'll include a link to a blog post that goes into it, but you just want to bump the module version so the gallery doesn't say, hey, you're trying to update a version that I already know about. So I'm going to update to version 13. Perfect. And theoretically, I have the key already. I don't know if I do. All right, that should be good enough. So if I want to actually update that, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to run publish module, the path to the module. There's a way to do it for modules that you have loaded, but I always just like to hard code, I'm actually updating, this specific module. And actually, okay, I have it double nested because in a GitHub repository, this is the name of the repository, and this is like the module folder. And the key is just, if I go to PowerShell Gallery, actually this one is redacted, so I can safely browse here. Once you sign up, so if you have like a Windows Live account, you can register for the PowerShell Gallery if you want to publish a module up here. And you basically just click your account thing, and I could copy the key to my clipboard, and thankfully it is redacted there. So I have that in memory right now, and I'm just going to run a thing that will theoretically publish this. And it's going to say, hey, you need NuGet.exe. Again, I could have done a force, and it would have automatically pulled that down. Oh, no. Must exceed. Oh, I have to bump it again. All right, so we'll get off version 13. That is good. All right, so we'll run the same command, and hopefully now I've picked a version that is not out on the PowerShell Gallery. And so it went through. It's really quick, and theoretically, where's my window? I should be able to search for PS Slack, and it should be version 14. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was it. It's just publish module. I mean, yeah, no, not worthy of applause. So if you do find yourself writing modules, it can get to be kind of a pain. I personally forget to update, so I'll have my code out on GitHub, and then I'll make a change or submit someone's pull request or merge someone's pull request. And I always forget to actually update the PowerShell Gallery code. So there is a way to automatically have that happen. I included a link to it. If you get into writing modules, it's kind of a handy workflow. Basically, it will run some code to test things automatically using a free service called AppVer. And if those tests succeed, it will publish it to the gallery, and it will also publish a sort of development build. So you probably want to keep your gallery publication production quality, the most stable release. But a lot of times you might want to enable dev builds for people who like to live dangerously. And so the PowerShell team actually does this with their DSC resources. So this blog post talks to how you can basically update both things. So I'm going to show you a quick example where I can basically register a new PS repository. This is from the PowerShell Gallery. And I'm basically I'm going to say, hey, I want to call this Slack dev, and I'm going to point to this particular URL. And for whatever module you're using, they would have to give you this URL. And I'm going to say it's trusted so it doesn't prompt me because I'm tired of it prompting me. It will take a couple seconds, and once it's done, I should be able to search it. So if you ever work with DSC modules or other things from Microsoft, they're starting to do the same workflow where you can register development builds. And so now I could actually pull down the latest version from AppFair. And actually, if I browse out there, so I'm just going to open up the link to AppFair, which is the thing that builds these things for us. And I can actually download the zip file, or I could use the command I just used to install it. So that's, ooh, nope. Okay, so that's just a quick example of publishing a module. You might also want to publish a function. So that is pretty straightforward as well. I pulled down OpenISE function a little while ago. I'm just going to update it. And wait, what? Huh. I thought I pulled that down. Oh, I didn't. Okay. So I'm going to save scripts, OpenISE. Oh, it's already got it there. And path. Temp. Okay, so I saved the script, and now I'm going to open it. And I'm just going to bump the version to 1.0.2. And this is going to be like the same exact thing that I was doing with the module, right? I bump the version. I run publish script instead of publish module. I point to the path. And theoretically, it's just going to bump it. And so if I go out to PowerShell Gallery, I can actually find that particular script. What is it? Open. And theoretically, yeah, so it's got the latest version. So if you're not writing, I would always recommend writing modules. But if you just have like a particular function or a script that you want to make available to people, because sometimes it doesn't really make sense to have a whole module for like one particular function or one particular script. You can use this sort of script functionality of the PowerShell Gallery. I think that is it for publishing. Where am I? Yeah, okay. So we are almost done. Any questions on publishing modules or scripts?
Yeah. Once you have the deploy to Azure automation, but, can you talk a little about what that's doing and how you set that up?
That is a great question and something I'd have to follow up with after. I can include some link in the notes. Does anyone work with that?
I haven't done it yet, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can basically in the notes, in the meetup notes, in the GitHub notes, I can point a reference to that. I know I've heard other people using it before. I just haven't personally used it yet. My first experience with Azure was the other day. It's actually kind of nice. I was able to spin up 50 VMs in like a couple seconds with something like PoshRS job. It's very nice. Okay, so that is publishing modules. So the last bit, so the PowerShell Gallery is like public, right? If you have particular scripts that you don't want to share, or maybe your company isn't at the point where they're comfortable sharing code yet, I'd probably encourage you to get them to do that. Having your code out there, even though it might seem like it's risky or it might seem like you're spending time for something that's for the public versus for yourself, you'll probably find that people will actually contribute back and help you. They might actually submit you bug fixes and kind of help with stuff that actually helps your company. So using open source is really very helpful. It's also kind of nice, if you move on to the next job, a lot of times you'll just lose access to all the projects and fun things that you might have actually cared about. If you have an open source project, you can sort of keep contributing if you're interested in it. And it's kind of nice on your resume as well. Yeah. So anyways, but if you don't want it out there, maybe it actually does have like proprietary information or like keys or something, or maybe it's really specific to your environment. No one else is going to benefit from it. And even if it's not, if it's like a public module, it can be very helpful to have an internal gallery. So we were just hitting that public, like PowerShellGallery.com, but what if PowerShellGallery.com or whatever's behind it goes down? Or what if the author of a module that you're depending on takes it away? Maybe they take away your left pad module. I don't know if you've used NPM, but there was a big fun thing with that. Things can go very wrong. So it's helpful to sort of have like an internal repository that's always going to have the version that you need available. And let's see. And also it's kind of nice, if you're relying on something that's publicly, whatever, community contributed, if they make a update to their module that breaks something you're using, maybe they change like a parameter name or something innocuous like that. It would be nice to have the version like tagged to what you actually need with an internal repository. There's a lot of stuff out there. So Microsoft just released this PS Private Gallery. If you go to github.com/PowerShell/PS Private Gallery, and I'll include a link in the notes, including a link to a walkthrough that a gentleman recently did, Michael Lombardi. Hopefully I got that right. There's also sort of like things that you can buy or free versions of these. ProGet and Artifactory are really common sort of package management solutions out there. There's a variety of other ones. Google around if you do start using it, but I just wanted to highlight the ones that I've seen before. Whew, sorry if I kind of raced through that. Wow. I think that might be everything. Any questions on internal galleries? That's probably the thing I have the least experience with, but no. Cool. Question?
Maybe you've already covered this in your prior meetings, since this is a new group.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little about why you set up the group, what your experience is with PowerShell? Did I miss that in the beginning? I was late.
Steve, do you want to talk?
Yeah, so we've had this is our third meeting. I'm Steve Frankovich. I originally set this up, and Warren joined to help me out with it. And I've been using PowerShell ever since it came out as an Exchange administrator and Skype administrator, and wanted to give back to the community. I do some blogging. Warren had his intro at the beginning too, but just getting a group of professionals here in Boston together to advance our knowledge in PowerShell and working together as a community will only help us all out.
What do you hope to, do you have any particular goals to get out of it, or is it more just, give it back right now?
Yeah, that's our goal, is to give, that's my goal, is we just give back, just